Welcome to session 6 of Confronting Unbelief. We are using this book, Confronting Unbelief, Your Soul in the City of the Great King, as a guide for these sessions. It is available on Kindle through Amazon and paperback through Amazon, and also in the FAI app. You can get the PDF for free. So if that's helpful for you, it's a little less linear than these sessions, but I pray that it's an encouraging and edifying meditation. So in chapter 6 and session 6, as we explore different characteristics of the Lord's relationship with Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the stage upon which he stands to reveal his character to the nations, to me, to you. He reveals things about himself, and we can glean from and gain confidence in who he is and the integrity of his word and the veracity of his promises through his relationship to Jerusalem. And so in this session, we're meditating on the fact that he disciplines her, which might not be like a happy thing to talk about, but we know through text that we'll look at in a moment, discipline means you're a son. And if you're a son, you have a good father. So it's difficult, but it's a good thing. And this is the age that you get disciplined. In eternity, you don't sin, so you don't need to get disciplined. Isaiah 1, and Paul quotes it in Romans 9, that unless the Lord of hosts had left us a very small remnant, we would have become like Sodom and Gomorrah. We'd be gone. We'd be history. You can drive down past the Dead Sea now in Israel, and you see this weird desert formation thing that has the highest salt content of anywhere in the world. It is the site of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's just pillars of salt. And unless Israel's saying, unless the Lord had made a remnant, kept a remnant, and he did, unless he'd preserved us, that would have been our story. That would have been our end. But he doesn't destroy Jerusalem. He disciplines Jerusalem. Psalm 95, verse 7. The Lord is our God, and we are people of his pasture. We are the sheep of his hand. So today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. Hebrews quotes this in Hebrews 3. Do not harden your heart as in the rebellion, as in the trial in the wilderness, when things got hard and confusing, and you had excuses to accuse the Lord. In accusation, harden your hearts and rebel. Don't do that. It said today, if you hear his voice, keep a tender heart and do not rebel. Keep a tender heart and obey. If you don't, you get disciplined because he is committed to you. He's committed. He's jealous. John 10, to him the doorkeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice. Jesus is the good shepherd. His sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. They obey him because they know his voice. The good shepherd shepherds you. And if you go wandering, he will come and hound you out and find you. And even in Jesus' own life as the incarnate word, when he showed us how to live before the Lord, live a life of perfect obedience to the Lord, though he was a son, though he was the word incarnate, he yet learned obedience by the things that he suffered. Sometimes discipline looks like suffering. In that affliction, God purges you. David says, it was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn to love your law. Hebrews 12, if you endure chastening, if you endure discipline, God is dealing with you as a son. So this is actually encouraging, because what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, if you are not being disciplined, you should be fearful, because you're an orphan, you're a bastard, you're an illegitimate child. You do not have a father. Furthermore, the writer's saying, we've had human fathers who corrected us, and we respected them. So shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? Would we not give ourselves to the strong, saving, disciplinary hand of our Father, the Father of lights, the Father of glory? For, they're saying our fathers, indeed, they would chasten us for a few days, as would seem best to them. But he, the Lord, is disciplining us for our good, for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now, there's no discipline in the world that feels joyful for the present. It's painful. It is painful, but afterwards it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. And the Lord tells us in Psalm 32, verse 8 and 9, he says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go, and I will guide you with my eye. But do not be like the horse or the mule, which have no understanding, and they have to be harnessed with a bit and a bridle, otherwise they won't come near you. I don't want to have to break you in and bind you up in a bridle. Just hear my voice and come to me. Now, if you don't, he'll put the bridle on you because he loves you, because he's a good father, because he wants to bring you into the way everlasting and keep you on the narrow road that leads to life, keep you off the wide road that leads to destruction. So that's that makes sense for us in the day-to-day, like Tuesday afternoon, that's relevant, but it's also relevant at the end of the age. And so what we see, we've talked before in other sessions, other studies, about how this age is training and preparation for eternity to come, and how you live and act now, how you behave, like relate to the Lord in the secret place, when you pray, when you fast, when you give in secret, when you choose to go in the opposite spirit of lust or greed or anger in secret. The Lord sees it in secret, and he will reward you openly. Or the parable of the talents. One guy was given 5, one guy was given 10, one guy was given 1. And the guys with 5 and 10 and leveraged those talents and bore more fruit. The guy with 1 went and buried it in the sand because he was a coward. These guys got rewarded because to whom much is given, much will be required, and he who was faithful with little will be entrusted with more. But the one who wasn't diligent, wasn't faithful, even if it was just 1 talent, he is pushed out into outer darkness, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's heavy. So the Lord wants you to stand before him and hear, well done, good and faithful servant. So he will shepherd you and guide you and discipline you in this age for the glory of the next age. There's suffering in this age for the glory of eternity. There's suffering in this age for the joy set before you, and he is the joy set before you. On a cosmic level, we see that in a corporate sense in Jerusalem's story. And Jerusalem, Jacob, is at the epicenter of that age-ending storm that carries us as the threshold between this age and eternity. We've talked in several sessions in this series about Zechariah 12, verses 2 to 3. The Lord says, behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples, and they will lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem because the Lord has incited them to do so. It's like Pharaoh's heart getting hardened, and then the Lord hardens it even more to make his name known and magnified and glorified. Isaiah 2, the Lord of hosts has a day when all of the pride and loftiness and haughtiness of man will be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted. The Lord, every knee will bow except his. He will be the only one left standing. But that is a discipline against Jerusalem. The Lord is disciplining Jerusalem. The time of Jacob's trouble is Jacob's final purging before eternity, when he brings in everlasting righteousness, and Jerusalem will dwell in safety, no longer in covenantal jeopardy due to covenantal infidelity. Jeremiah 23:20 tells us that the anger of the Lord will not turn back until he has executed and performed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days, you will understand it perfectly. He will make this clear. Jeremiah 37, alas, for that day is great. There's none like it. It is the time of Jacob's trouble, but he will be saved out of it. Jacob will be saved out of his trouble. He will be disciplined, and then he will be brought into fullness.
We hope you're enjoying this Maranatha Global Bible Study. Wanted to take a quick minute here and ask you to consider something. Our highest priority as an organization is laying foundations where there are none in the 1040 window, in accordance with Romans 15, to name the name where it's never been named. Now, if this is something that resonates with you, if you love the Maranatha message, proclaiming it to the ends of the earth at the end of the age, if this is something that resonates with you, I want to ask you to consider becoming a $5 monthly supporter of FAI. This is as crazy as it sounds, one of the most relevant and significant ways that you can support the work of the Great Commission through the FAI Global family is by giving $5 a month. Because as the collective body of $5 givers a month grows, so too does our ability to increase our workforce on the ground and expand our initiatives and activities and operations in the Middle East in the 1040 window. So click on the link below for more information and consider starting today becoming a $5 monthly supporter of FAI. Thank you guys. Back to the teaching.
Daniel 9, starting in verse 24, he says 70 weeks are determined. These 3.5 years are determined. The angels explaining a vision to Daniel. For your people, Daniel, and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. He says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 72 weeks. The street will be built again and the wall, even in troublesome times, and then after the 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince who is to come, the Antichrist, will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. These things must shortly take place. They must come to pass. And he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, for 7 years. But in the middle of the week, he will bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. Jesus references this in Matthew 24. The abomination of desolation. Even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. Daniel 12, 1 and 7. At that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was before and never will be since. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. Now think of like the things that have been moved into the realm of possibility since Cain killing Abel, all the violence of man, all the ways that these things have mounted up. And we know that there's a day coming when the nations will learn war no more, will melt our swords into plowshares, will help the Lord restore the earth, will give ourselves to agricultural restoration. But until then, all of the campaigns, all of the crusades, all of the violence, all of the wars, all of the catastrophes, all of the calamities, all of the conflicts, even things that are happening right now in the earth, or things that have happened. The Holocaust was horrible. The Syrian civil war is horrible. There are things that were in the realm of impossibility until somebody decided to make a nuclear bomb, or a barrel bomb, or chemical weaponry, and release it in a village full of children. That's happening right now as I record this. Horrible things have been brought into the realm of possibility, and this is saying that those will pale in comparison to the severity of the day of the Lord, in comparison to the severity of those 3.5 years, those final 3.5 years, the tribulation at the end of this age that brings us to the threshold of eternity and the return of the Lord. And we might ask ourselves, why the severity? Why does it have to be worse than the Holocaust? Why does it have to be worse than the Syrian Civil War? Why does it have to be worse than Hiroshima? Why does it have to be worse than all of these horrible things that mankind has done and engaged in and inflicted upon each other? Continuing in Daniel 12, then Daniel heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, and this angel in the vision, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. The power of the holy people has to be completely shattered. That discipline is to break the back of Jacob. He's been limping since he wrestled with that man overnight, but his back will break. The strength of Jacob will be completely shattered before he enters eternity, because you cannot take anything of the flesh into eternity. Zechariah 14, behold, the day is coming And your spoil, he's speaking to Jerusalem, your spoil will be divided in your midst. I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken. The houses will be plundered. The women will be raped. Half the city will go into captivity. But the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Jesus says in Matthew 24:21 and 22, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of time, the beginning of world, until then, no, nor ever shall be afterwards. This is it. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive it. But for the sake of the elect, those days are numbered to 3.5 years. You have need of endurance. He reiterates that again in Mark 13. The time of Jacob's trouble is designed and engineered by the Lord to break the carnal strength of Jacob, because you cannot bring anything of the flesh into eternity. But the time of Jacob's trouble is not just Jacob's problem. So we don't talk about these things with haughty hearts. We don't look at this and rejoice and go, oh, sweet, but we're going to get raptured, so we're not going to be around for it. We will be around for it, and we will lock arms with Jacob like a good brother, because we have a good father, and we know that our father trains a child up in the way that he should go, so that when he is old, he will not depart from it. And when Jacob enters eternity, he will enter eternity in full maturity and full confidence and trust and allegiance in the Lord, his God, who delivered him because he delights in him. If this is true for us as humans, broken humans and fallible parents can train a child up in the way that they should go, so that when they're older, they're an adult and they can walk in the way that they should walk. If we can do that, the Lord certainly does that. And it is true for the Father of lights and glory. He has an end in mind for wayward Jacob. And it is redemptive, beautiful, and glorious. Jacob cannot earn his place or position at his father's table. He will not earn place or position at his father's table, but he will be purged of all unrighteousness. Isaiah 40, speak comfort to Jerusalem, for she has paid double for all her sins, but her war is over. That fight, that discipline ends one day. Those days are numbered. So our responsibility in this age is to keep perspective of the next age. It is only in light of eternity that we can trust Jesus to make amends for all the wrongs that we commit and to deal appropriately with those who have committed wrongs against us. To trust him to discipline us, discipline others. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. What we cannot do is take it upon ourselves to discipline his children for him. And that's often what we do with Jerusalem, and it's completely inappropriate. We must cling to grace for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters. We must be a good brother to Jacob. And when they wander, we refuse the murderous apathy of Cain, the culture of Cain, and we be our brother's keeper. So in this way, we don't point to Jacob's rebellion and go, yeah, look, he deserves to be disciplined. He deserves everything that's coming to him. He deserves the trouble. If we believe that Jacob is enduring the trouble because he deserves the trouble, we disqualify ourselves from bearing prophetic witness in the trouble. But if Jacob's enduring the trouble because he's being disciplined and prepared for eternity, then we can lock arms with him in prophetic intercession and solidarity and say, Jacob, you have a good father, and he will see you through this thing, and I'm going to be right there with you when he does. What we don't want to do is be the older brother in Luke 15 who sees the father lavish extravagant love on the wayward son who comes home and then resent it with bitterness in our hearts. We won't, and then not go to the party. And the father says, but my son was dead and now he's alive. He was lost and he's been found. Come and drink. Come to the table. Come to the feast. Come to the feast. Be a good brother to Jacob. Be a good brother to Jerusalem. Take courage in how the Lord disciplines Jacob, and you know that he has a redemptive end in mind. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, to give you hope in a future. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to discipline you so I can bring you into the fullness of prophetic promises. That's what we want to cling to. We can cling to it for Jerusalem. We can cling to it for David. We can cling to it for Jacob. And we can cling to it for ourselves. Maranatha.